Hey, Clayton, are you sure we can't predict Jesus coming back? Won't Christians be able to read the signs and know? This is a good question. A lot of people wonder about this because they read things in the Bible and they say, well, the Bible talks about things that will happen at the end and what that will look like. And so it seems like maybe we're going to be able to piece together the clues and figure out when Jesus is coming back. But we've got to start with the clearest things here. And we've got to see there are dozens of statements in the New Testament where we are told you will not know the hour when Jesus comes back. Let me read to you the most substantial one. This is in Matthew chapter 24. Jesus has been describing, first he's been describing when the temple will be destroyed in Jerusalem, but then he's also shifting to a question that the disciples asked where they said, but when will we know when you're going to come again? And this is what he says about that. He says, about that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. He's saying, look, nobody knows except for the Father. Even me while I'm on earth, I don't know when that day is. And then he goes on to use this image. He says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. In the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day that Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That's how it's going to be at the coming of the Son of Man. He goes on a little bit later. He says, therefore, keep watch, because you do not know what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. So this is what Jesus is saying. He uses these images. He says it's like the people in Noah's day. They had been warned. Noah had said something to them, but they had no idea when it was coming. So they just kind of went about their business and they were totally surprised by it. It's going to be like that when it happens. The other image that he uses is he says it's like a thief, okay? You don't get like a flyer in the mail saying, hey, I'm going to show up at 3 a.m. on Tuesday to steal all your stuff. Like, you don't know when the thief is coming. So what do you have to do? You have to always be ready. The only way to not be surprised by a thief is to always be ready for the thief. It's not to predict when he's coming, because you're not going to predict when a thief is coming. And so the difference between the person whose stuff is taken away, who is robbed by the thief, and the person who fends off the thief is the person who is always ready for the arrival of the thief. Now, it's not saying Jesus is, going to come and take all your stuff, but the idea is he is going to surprise you. And Jesus actually tells parables to this effect. He talks about a group of servants whose master goes on a trip and they start misbehaving, and the master shows up unexpectedly. And it was like, no, you should have just been acting like you're supposed to while you were waiting for me to come, because you didn't know when I was going to come. He tells another story about some bridesmaids who are at a wedding and they're thinking, oh, we're missing some supplies. We didn't have all that we needed. So they go shopping to go find the supplies. And while they're gone, the groom comes and the wedding starts and they miss out on the wedding. And the whole point is you should have been ready for the wedding the whole time. You shouldn't have been, off doing something else. You should have been ready for it because you didn't know when the groom was going to come. And again, the Bible says this. It's in Mark 13 and other places. Even the part when Jesus returns to heaven, when he's there, his disciples, his followers are saying, okay, tell us when you're going to restore the kingdom. And he says this, it's not for you to know times or dates that the Father has set by his own authority. He's saying to his own followers, he's not just saying to the people out there who don't believe in Jesus, like they won't understand, they won't know when it's coming. He's saying, you guys, the apostles, you don't even get to know the time. We're not going to talk about that, right? And then he sends them out and says, no, the thing you need to worry about is being on mission, not about predicting when I'm going to come. There's actually a passage where sometimes people will say, but what about this passage? Does it say that we won't be surprised? Okay, so let me read this to you, okay? And people will say that's because we'll be able to put the signs together. 1 Thessalonians says this, chapter 5. He says, now, brothers and sisters, about times and dates we don't need to write you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. So he's writing to a group of Christians saying, you know it's going to surprise you like a thief in the night. But then a little bit later in verse 4, Paul does say, but you, brothers and sisters, unlike the people who are out there in the world, you're not in darkness so that this day should surprise you like a thief. And sometimes people will read that and they'll say, but see, that's the thing. It'll be like a thief to all those people on the outside, but those of us on the inside, we'll put together the signs, we'll put together the clues, and we'll be able to predict when he's coming. We'll be ready because we'll see it coming. But that is not what Paul says in the verses that follow after it. He says, here's how you're not going to be surprised. Here's how you're not going to be surprised. It's not by predicting, but by behaving like you're supposed to when he comes. So verse 5 says this, you are all children of the light and children of the day. We don't belong to the night or to the darkness. So then let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night. Those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, putting on faith and love as a breastplate and the hope of salvation as a helmet. So what is it that we're supposed to do to make sure we're not surprised? It's to be awake and alert, watching, right? Ready. We're supposed to behave like we're supposed to, with faith and love, with hope of salvation. It's how we act that makes it so that we're not surprised. It's the person coming and saying, "Oh, I was ready for you." Okay, I don't know when my guests are going to arrive for dinner, but I'm not surprised when they do because I'm ready for them to come. That's the idea, right? Here's the thing. Every generation has tried to predict this. There have been some people who've said, well, okay, I'm going to put together the signs. This is going to happen in the end. That's going to happen in the end. That's going to happen in the end. Oh, and look, it's happening, right? There's an earthquake and there's a war and there's an eclipse and there's a plague and there's locusts and there's whatever it is. And they say, these are all the signs of the things. And they try to calculate all this stuff. Every generation has tried to do that. And guess what? Every person has been wrong. Everybody's wrong. He hasn't come back at any of the times someone predicted. Why do people keep on predicting it? Part of the challenge is that some of the things that the Bible describes as happening in the end are actually things that are not new at the end. They're not brand new sorts of things. They're the sorts of things that have characterized every era of human history in a broken world. Now, they may intensify at the end. The kind of volume's going to go up, but the same song has been playing for a long time. And so when you see those things, Jesus said, you're going to hear wars and rumors of wars and trouble all over the place. Do not be alarmed. Don't take those as signs. The end is not yet. He actually says, don't look at those things as signs to predict. What he's saying is just be ready all the time. This, by the way, is actually one of the reasons at our church why we don't teach the rapture. It's one of the reasons we don't teach the rapture is because if the rapture happened, it would be an easy way to predict when Jesus came back, because the rapture, according to the people who believe it, is supposed to happen 7 years before Jesus comes back, which means when it happens, you can set the clock and say, 7 years after, I can predict Jesus' return. And Jesus said, no one's going to be able to predict it. Thanks for listening. If you've got your own questions, email questions@BibleSavvy.com. Like and subscribe to catch our regular episodes every Monday on the Bible Savvy Podcast.